Thanks for joining early, everyone. We'll go ahead and wait a few more minutes and get started on the hour. All right, well, it is the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started with our introductions while more people roll in before we head into our demo. So welcome back, all of you that may have been with us for a long time now, and welcome everyone who may be new. We are actually approaching our first year anniversary of this call series. So for those of you that have been with us for a while, thank you so much for joining us each month. So unfortunately, my co-host Darby is out of office today, so myself and our guest speaker, Glenn Blinkman, will be kicking it off this morning. For those of you that may not have been joining us, my name is Bridget Ballard, and I am a customer success manager based in the Pacific Northwest, and my home office is in Bellevue, Washington. Darby, who is my usual co-host, is also a customer success manager. She's based out of the East Coast and her home office is in Reston, Virginia. And today we have a guest speaker who will be doing our live demo for us. Glenn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Bridget. My name is Glenn Blinkman. I'm a customer success manager, and I focus on using Teams as an app platform, which is why Bridget brought me in. I've been with Microsoft about 8 years, and I've done all things technical for years and years and years with Microsoft.
Glenn is our app wizard. All right, so a quick agenda before we jump into the demo. We're going to be going through what are my options for adding apps in Microsoft Teams. So I'll break it down again between first-party apps, third-party apps, and custom. Then we'll go into a live demo of how to enable setup policies in GCC. And then we'll go into how to side rail an app in Microsoft Teams. So we mentioned it before on our call, but side railing is a pretty recent release in GCC, which allows you to actually pin an app to the left-hand side rail for all of your organization to see. And lastly, Glenn is going to go through App Studio, which is how you specifically make a custom app inside of Microsoft Teams. So just a few slides before we jump into the good stuff. My icon showed up before the rest of it. But I love this slide because it does a great job at breaking down the different types of applications that you can add into Teams. Going from left to right, you have our Microsoft first-party apps. Those are the ones you already know and love. We get tons of feedback on Planner, forms, even being able to link your PowerPoints and Word documents into your channels. Then we have third-party apps, which was released at the beginning of this year. We have done a few sessions on those, so if you're interested and may have missed out, we have all of those recorded on our public-facing website, which I will be sure to drop in the chat. And this includes things such as YouTube, Salesforce, SurveyMonkey, Trello. Our goal with this is, let's say you're comfortable with Trello, right? And you've looked at Planner, but you really don't want to move all your Trello boards over to Planner. Well, you can simply turn on Trello for your Teams channels and have that go into all of the boards that you already have published. Then we have what we're covering today. We have specifically custom applications. Now, to create a custom application inside of Teams, you do have to enable App Studio for your organization. And that's something that Glenn is going to show us after this. And within custom applications, there are 3 ways which you can achieve this. Through our Power Platform, if you have Power Automates that you like to use or you're curious in that, there's tons of Teams connections within Power Automates, Power Apps, and Power Virtual Agent. Then we have our app templates. So these are actually templates that Microsoft has posted, where we've posted them to GitHub, and you can take that code and put it in your App Studio and get that running for your organization. Company Communicator and FAQ Plus are extremely popular ones. Company Communicator actually allows you to push notifications throughout your entire organization without needing to send out emails. So if you're looking for a way to reach a large amount of your organization without needing to send out those email blasts, Company Communicator is a great option for that. FAQ Plus also allows you to create chatbots for your organization, and we can go into a little bit more detail about those 2 later on. And then, of course, built from scratch is also an option. With App Studio, you do have the availability to build a custom app from the ground up. Glenn, do you have anything else to add on this slide that I may have missed?
I did want to point out that there are a lot of app templates available, not just Company Communicator and FAQ Plus, but it does show 30+ templates, and they're adding more all the time. So that's one of the links we should send out also, is the template page that shows all the different templates that are already pre-made.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be sure to attach that into our content. And then I also included some custom app examples that we've been seeing from the field. So within App Studio, you can simply just link a link to a website. And it's as easy as about 10-minute setup for linking that website. So we've seen people link their help desk software, their intranet site. If you already have a training portal that doesn't have its own integration in the Teams App Store, you can link that as well. One that we've also seen popping up is a COVID questionnaire for returning to work. So, internally, we have a little questionnaire that says, have you been exposed to anyone that's had COVID? Do you have a fever? And it's just a simple 2-3 questionnaire that people fill out before they come into the office. And then Microsoft Learning Pathways, which Glenn will be walking us through in App Studio. This is something that we offer for free, and it allows you to set up in SharePoint specific learning pathways of Microsoft tooling and publish it to your organization. So Glenn will do a lot better job at explaining it than I am, but he will help us walk through specifically how to set that up. So with that, Glenn, that's all we have for our slides, and I'll turn it over to you for our demo. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Thanks, Bridget. And am I sure I want to share? Yes, I am. Okay, is that showing up?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. So here's the Teams Admin Center. And if you're going to have your own apps rolled out, the first thing that you have to do in the government community cloud tenants is to enable these. In the commercial clouds, everything is on by default. All the custom apps, all the third-party apps, everything's on. And you can turn things off if you want to. In the government tenants, it's exactly the opposite. Everything is off by default, and you can turn things on. You have to turn things on if you want to use them. makes sense because it's government to do that. And we're going to go to the Teams Admin Center here. And then we're going to start out with permissions policies. And we have in the security, I call it as a belt and suspenders approach. I'll show you what I mean. So you have app permission policies, and you might think, okay, all I really need to do here is go into the permission policies, the default one or a test group one, and add that app. No, there are two places to go through. First thing that you need to do is go over here on the right side and go to the org-wide app settings. And what this is doing over here, I will open this up. This allows you to adjust the permissions for the whole tenant. Now, in the whole tenant, the whole organization that has teams, if you turn this off for the tenant, nobody in the tenant at all can use any third-party apps, custom apps, and everything is blocked by default. So the first thing to do is set the org-wide app permission policies to what would make sense for your organization. So let's say if you didn't want to allow if you want to allow just some third-party apps, you'd still have to turn this on. You could have you could have this off, which would automatically enable all new third-party apps, and you would have a list of blocked apps here, and then you could unblock the apps one at a time. But allowing third-party apps is the first key that you'd need to be able to allow any third-party apps to work. And that includes even App Studio to make your own apps. Custom apps is the other thing. You want to allow interaction with custom apps. So an app that you make, do you want to allow your users to use them? And this is, again, this is for anyone in the tenant, not everyone in the tenant. So saving that off, that gets you your first set of permissions. The next set of permissions, then, we have something that's more granular. It's not the whole tenant, it's most of the users. So we have a global policy. This is your default policy. You may have just the global, or you may have created other policies. So you could create a policy per agency, a policy per bureau, however you want to do that. Different sections could have different policies, however granular you want to get. And for the policies, you can say which Microsoft apps are available, and this would be either all apps or take specific ones, block all others, block some, allow all of them, but block some of them. For third-party apps, you could either allow all apps or, let's say, allow specific apps and block all others. Then you can say which ones you want. Let's say I was adding App Studio. You could add just a single app to this list if you wanted, and then everything else that's a third-party app would be blocked. In custom apps, once you have any custom apps made, this is how you would allow permissions to it. Now, allowing the permissions to it doesn't mean that people actually have it to use. They have it available to them, but they probably would never find it. And the reason I say that is because it wouldn't show up here in the left rail or in their list of apps. This is a Teams client. Where it would show up is in this full list of apps if they went to the catalog. So your list of apps will reflect what you've allowed. Any custom apps would show as built for your tenant, built for your organization, and then all the others would be categorized and listed. Anything that you've approved from the App Studio, from the app catalog. So back to the setup policies. For the setup policies, this is what's going to show up, what's going to be basically deployed to the users. So where you might have used software to distribute an application before, this is now done all in Teams, because Teams is the platform. But how do you publish the apps? This is how it's done. I'm going into the global one now, and this is all my pinned apps. So it's adjusting what you see on the left rail here. I added a learning app, which is what I'm going to show later how to do. This is showing the pinned apps on the left side. Just simply adding an app to this, you can allow custom apps and pinning of apps. Pinning of apps isn't yet in the government community cloud, but the control is there. This is coming soon. So let's say we have something like you want to allow 365 QA and you wanted to add that to the left rail. Saving this would then have it pinned to the left rail for everybody who's getting the global policy. You could have different agencies or different sections having different policies. Again, just like the permissions policies, the setup policies work the same way. Everybody's client doesn't have to work the same. Now, this is also going to affect not just the desktop and the web clients, but also the mobile clients. So if you're on a mobile device, this also shows up on which programs you have on the mobile client. So at this point, how do you get a custom app in there? So I'm going to show you. First, I'll show you, start with the SharePoint site. So this is Learning Pathways. This is a SharePoint communication site that you can import using the SharePoint provisioning system into your tenant, and it gives you a place to have all the different Microsoft 365 training videos and training materials. And this site actually will update itself periodically. And let's say I wanted to say getting started with Microsoft Teams. And this is how I would navigate in the SharePoint system for navigating with Teams. Now, once I create this learning app, I've taken the same SharePoint site and redone the navigation so that there are tabs up at the top. So like that Teams pull down that I had, instead of having this be a pull down, I've just redone the navigation, but it's going to the same site. If you click on the little globe here, it will bring you to that site in a browser. But if you're using the full Teams client, you have the opportunity to have either one or multiple SharePoint sites and aggregate them into an application. You don't have to use this just for a learning application, but it's a good place to start. Now, let's take a look at what it takes to do this. I'm going to start out with a program called App Studio. And if you go into the App Store, as long as you have App Studio unblocked, they can create an application. And this starts out in a chat interface, but what we want is the manifest editor. This allows you to define a custom application. You would start out with creating a new app, but in this case, I'm going to bring up an existing one so I can go through what I already typed in. But starting up a new app, if I were starting this from scratch, I really I'm starting out with giving it names. I need to generate an application ID for it. Just hitting the generate button will make that for you. You don't have to come up with this yourself. You name the package, give it a description. This is all developer information and partner information. All this is stuff that you see on every application. Matter of fact, even App Studio, if you go to the About section, you have a website, a privacy policy, terms of use. All Teams applications are laid out the same way. And this allows you to make an application like this and it gives it the privacy policy URL, the terms of use URL. And it doesn't check to make sure they actually work. In case you don't have those, you can make something up, but if you do have, it is a best practice to have a privacy page in terms of use that you can refer to when building applications. If you're any good at graphics, you can make your own icons for the application, and you can pick an accent color. You can either put in the hex code for any color if you have any specific branding, or go with one of the predefined colors, and it'll give you a preview of what it will look like. We're adding a version number, descriptions, developer information. All that is pretty standard. And for this application, since it's SharePoint sites, I'm not going to have bots or connectors or messaging extension. The only thing I'm going to have here are tabs. Because really what I'm trying to do is take the existing SharePoint site and redo the navigation and make it something that people will find and use. A lot of SharePoint sites go mostly unused, and this is to help get better use out of the existing SharePoint site. Remember that any updates that you do to the SharePoint site are going to be reflected in this app as well, because it's pointing to the same content. So you don't have two different things to maintain. You just have the one thing to maintain still, which is SharePoint. As part of the resources for this, I'm going to give you the link to the instructions on how to do this that goes into depth, but we're really just giving it a name to name the tabs, and then defining the URLs. There are URLs in your site. That's for the little globe icon. And there are content URLs. And if we scroll through this content URL, you'll see I'm actually pointing to the Teams logon page and then linking to the site below that for the content. What the app is doing is running all the running the SharePoint pages in an iframe, and that's a technical term. It's really not all that important. There's just a guide for how to get that content in there correctly, and this is the syntax for putting in the content URL.
Hey Glenn, there's a question about that. So I think it came up earlier, but someone asked, how can I register a custom ASP.NET site as a custom app with Microsoft Teams? If I'm reading that the right way, I think the question might be, how do I make that website an app, which is what you just covered. So I want to point that out to whoever asked that question. Glenn just went over, if you have a specific website you want to point to, just that frame that he was just in, you can link that in there.
Right, and remember you're doing page by page. So each tab is going to be a different page for the websites. The tricky part on this, so linking to what the person was asking was, they've got an ASP.NET page in there. In this case, this is SharePoint. So in Azure Active Directory, you have to have an app ID for doing single sign-on so that the authentication happens properly. And these are the configurations for SharePoint Online But if you are linking out to a different website that's ASP.net and it's not on SharePoint Online, you could make in Azure Active Directory a different app ID for it and put in the authentication if it needs any. If it doesn't need any, then you don't even need to do this step. You can just leave this blank. Really, and that's the end of this configuration. At this point, you can test this, and if something is wrong with this, if you mistyped something or it doesn't like a name or something it will show up under description here, and it'll describe the errors. And if you see a description that's blank, that's a good sign. That means that you didn't have any errors. At this point, you can hit install, and you just add that for yourself temporarily, and it then brings you to the app and lets you try this. And then this is what it appears like. You just go into the start area or whatever the first tab is, and you can try it out. Once you've done that, what you would normally think to do is take the app and publish it, except publish won't work in a government community cloud tenant. You actually have to hit download because the user interface is a little bit different. Normally, you'd expect to go into the Teams admin center and work with a custom app and approve it that way. We don't have that in the government cloud. What we have is in the Teams client itself, somebody who has Teams administrator privileges has to do an upload of the custom app, and then they can upload this for the tenant. They take the zip file and they upload it. In my case, the app already exists. If I were doing any updates to it, I'd simply click on here and do an update. I would just have to change the version number if I were going to do that. But that's the trick to getting the app installed. Now, once you've uploaded that app, again, this is where your setup policies go. Your app permission policies and your setup policies have to be in place. If you want to distribute the app, going into the setup policy and then putting the app in the left rail, for example, if you want to get it out to everybody, is where you'd go to do all this. And let's see, do we have any more questions, Bridget?
We do not right now.
Okay. Let's see. As far as types of apps that you can do, you don't have to have SharePoint apps. I will bring you to the other spot under Azure Active Directory. You could have other types of apps. So any custom apps that you do, you can register new apps here. But that gets to be complicated. If you want to do as a first test, as a first app, a SharePoint site, we have a very simple guide for getting started with it, and it's very simple to do. You just follow the template, the guide for this carefully, and let us know if you need a hand. And I think we're getting pretty close to on time. So we want to go back to the slide deck and we can start wrapping up.
Sure. So I don't have anything additional on the slide deck. We've gone over it a few times, but if you want to quickly jump back to your just main Teams client page, if you have any other apps that are already loaded in there that aren't custom as well. So you'll see when when you click on the 3 ellipses on your side rail.
Oh, well, I was in the wrong place. Oh, are you talking about here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'll notice as well that, we specifically just went through how to make a custom one. We've covered this before, but you notice that there's all these third-party apps as well. So what Glenn covered at the beginning, how to side rail, keep in mind that, if you kind of want to get your feet wet in the app world, there's tons out there that you can try and, kind of see how they interact before you jump into the custom world as well.
Even if you want to reorder what's already there, that is something that you can do. So if you wanted to, let's say, unpin calls because you were pinning a bunch of other things in there, you could do that. As a matter of fact, I did that in this tenant because you see calls don't show up here. It's under the ellipsis right now. So I have calls. Whereas on a stock, normally you would see that on the left rail. So it's your system. You can modify it as you see fit.
Alrighty, well, we are almost at time. If there are any more questions someone wants to ask quickly, we have time to answer them briefly. If not, we can let you all go, and we will be sure to post all of our content after. For those of you that may have not joined in the past, what we do after is we switch the link that you used to join back to our landing page. So I'll go and do that, and after the call, you'll be able to access all of our content that we've gone through before as well. All right, Glenn, I don't think there are any more questions, so we can go ahead and call it here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful weekend.